Hi, my name is Mark Senek, and I'm the author of the weblog Eye on FDA. And welcome to the third in a three-part series on the changing policy landscape and the impact on pharmaceutical marketing. The prior two sections of this presentation focused on the changing policy landscape and the changing communications landscape. Today, I'd like to focus on some suggestions for pharmaceutical action. First of all, one of the things I mentioned earlier in the presentation was that there's going to be a great deal of focus on post-marketing commitments and on various aspects of pharmaceutical marketing, such as relationships with medical societies, sponsorship of CME programs. Know your track records in these areas. Create your talking points now. Make sure you have your ducks in a row before you're asked these questions. And these questions are certainly going to be coming up on Capitol Hill and likely in the media. But most importantly, I want to focus on creating and executing a digital strategy. Develop an integrated approach in digital media. Right now, digital is spawning new ways to communicate. Digital is evolving very quickly and integrating those various means, and the uptake is extremely fast. As we saw in the second presentation, the migration over to digital media, not only by mainstream media itself, but by consumers and even by physicians, is breathtaking. This is where branding is occurring today, and for the pharmaceutical sector needs to be there as well. The other thing that I would want to mention is that the analytics that are currently available through Google alone offer an extensive amount to test return on investment and to create, in essence, virtual focus groups online. YouTube currently allows you to put up a video and watch where people drop off, who those people are. You can really develop a very virtual focus group. You need to identify the potential tools you want to use. There are, I know that there's a great deal of conservatism on the part of med-reg departments to engage in digital media. There are a number of things that you can do that actually offer no risk whatsoever. The first, for example, is RSS feeds. RSS feeds, I have dogs barking here. The first is RSS feeds. RSS feeds allow you the capacity to issue your news instantly. If you're still issuing news by email, you're doing it in the mode of 10 years ago. By the time a person gets an email and opens it up, it's old news. It's almost like sending something out by fax. RSS feed is instantaneous. Most pharmaceutical companies are already on RSS feed, but some, including major biotech offerings, are not putting their news feeds up. YouTube offers an enormously rich opportunity for patient education, clinical trial recruitment, employee recruitment, and I believe probably has a role, particularly given the analytics, in the development of risk maps and REMS programs, where risk can be explained via video in a way that's going to create greater retention for people. There can be tutorials that come out over time to respond to ongoing issues. It really is a very rich environment that can be very risk-free. And what we're talking about are non-branded videos, videos that are not necessarily drawing the regulatory scrutiny that a branded video would do. And I think that, traditional concerns actually crumble in the face of the fact that coming reforms are really going to demand new approaches. The FDA does not regulate e-media per se. Regulatory parameters for the pharmaceutical industry generally apply for any type of media in which communications occurs, whether it's television, radio, print, in-person, or social media. And there are some variables that exist in the environment. The FDA may be coming out at some point with a regulatory guidance, and there are varied degrees of conservatism in the different regulatory cultures of companies. But it's not the medium, it's the message. It's not about where you put the message. It's about what the content of the message is and to ensure that you met regulatory parameters in putting it out there. What that means is that the traditional rules of engagement apply. You have to have fair balance, no unsubstantiated claims, no minimization risk, no superiority claims without studies. All of those things are parameters that you would apply to any communication that you come out with. As long as you apply those in digital media, you are minimizing any risk just like you would in a print ad. There are particular concerns with social media that you need to be content of in terms of off-label promotion, adverse event reporting, and full and fair balance. But again, it's not the medium, it's the message. There are no bad ways to deliver messages, there are only bad messages. And while you have traditional legal and regulatory concerns about communications, those simply apply to social media. But I would not be waiting for the FDA to come out for a guidance in this area. It's not likely to happen. One of the areas I want to focus on very briefly is elements of adverse event reportability. I want you to recall in the earlier section I had talked about the fact that I believe that companies are going to see an onus of or a push proposals by Congress for companies to be more aggressive and proactive about the discovery of adverse event reports. And here you see the elements of an adverse event report outlined, the criteria outlined in a white paper produced in September 2007 by the law firm Seyfarth Shaw. Identifiable patient, identifiable person reporting the event, a suspect drug or biological product, and an adverse experience or fatal outcome suspected to be due to the product. I know a lot of companies actually don't monitor blogs because they're afraid of discovering an adverse event report that they would have to perform pharmacovigilance against. But you could do the same thing in a letter to the find the same thing in a letter to the editor of a newspaper, but that wouldn't keep you from media monitoring. The idea that you're not monitoring the blogosphere, where major newspapers are migrating to and where consumers have migrated to in great numbers, is simply penny-wise and pound-foolish. And the notion that there is this rich store of adverse events there, I think, is unfounded. But in addition to that, bear in mind that companies are going to be likely put under some pressure to be much more proactive about finding adverse events. These are all the terms that if you don't know what they are, you should be knowing what they are, because they are, again, where branding is occurring for pharmaceutical products. A lot of times we don't take them seriously because, frankly, they sound silly. Twitter sounds silly. Tags, Wikipedia. But Twitter has been, the uptake on Twitter by mainstream media has been extreme. The New York Times twitters by section. The BBC twitters. In public affairs, the clerk of the House is now twittering House votes from the floor of the House. These are no longer merely social applications. Mainstream media have taken them up, mainstream business has taken them up, and mainstream public affairs has taken them up. Again, with pharmaceutical companies not being present, that vacuum gets filled by others. For skeptics and naysayers, there are those that said that television would not matter when it was an emerging new media. 1936, television won't matter in your lifetime or in mine. 1939 New York Times editorial cited that the problem is that people keep their eyes glued to a screen and no one has the time for it. I put to you that if you believe that new media is not a place where pharmaceutical companies need to be, in a few years you may be perceived in the same light as these naysayers. In conclusion, the environment is changing quickly on a regulatory front, financial front, communications front. The window of opportunity, frankly, is narrow, and the pharmaceutical industry is, frankly, quite behind. There needs to be every effort in developing an integrated, strategic, and proactive approach on how to use digital tools to help not only build a brand, but to meet the challenges that we saw in the last presentations regarding the closure, or at least the limitation of current avenues of pharmaceutical marketing, i.e. relationships with physicians and medical societies, and the scrutiny on direct-to-consumer advertising. Thanks very much. I hope you enjoyed this series, and I look forward to seeing you in the future.